about 6 minutes after the hour from the studios of AM 840 KXNT from Las Vegas, Nevada. Good evening, everyone. This is Lou Epton. We've got a great guest tonight, one of your favorites. His name, Dave Hinkson. He'll be joining us in just a couple of moments, but I've got a comment or two, if I may. Please. Here in the county of Clark, the great county of Clark, if you read today's RJ, do you remember the story we opened up with last night about the mailer that was sent to you by the Sequoia Pacific people, which, by the way, I reinstate, was and always will be illegal. They didn't have a return address on that flyer, so you didn't know where it was coming from. And of course, Captain Ferguson was surprised. Sure she was. Sure she was. Get a copy of today's RJ. County surprised by voting machine flyers. An interesting article by one Susan Green. Starts out, I'm not going to read it all, it's too lengthy and I want to get Dave on the air. But the manufacturer of Clark County's controversial new electronic voting system anonymously has mailed 25,000 voters promotional flyers extolling its products. Well, gee, did you think they would talk bad about it? I don't mind anyone extolling their product or their service, but there's so much garbage in here. When they say, oh, your vote is so safe, I want to reiterate, it is the unsafest form of voting and the most expensive form of voting ever. Now, here's a company that manufactures these electronic gizmos, right? Whether they knew it or not, and now they say, gee, we're sorry, we underestimated the number of machines you would need. Remember, these are expensive machines, and this company's in business to make a profit, in addition, to, in my opinion, to controlling your vote. They're going to give us 100 of them to make up for their naughtiness. They're going to donate 100. They don't care if they make money or not, do they? Oh, they'll give them away. What did we spend? 6-point-some-odd million? And that was just for openers, because the storage and the transportation and the maintenance and everything else is going to wind up many more millions. I don't know if you were with us last night when we had this story. We're going to follow this story, as is now, I hope, and soon, the Review-Journal. But if we don't get on the phone to Catherine Ferguson, and who's ever running the county commission, and say, look, let's do something different. Let's have an honest vote for a change. We know the past several were not. We know that. We know we've still got people investigating, and they're not going away either. And I can't mention them at this time because they may come up with very important stories in the not-too-distant future. But we all call Captain Ferguson at 455-2780 and say, hey, do you know what, Kathy? Nations the size of India, where they've got a lot more people, use paper ballots, and they work very well. And how much would it cost to print paper ballots for us? And then we could have qualified people at the end of the day in each precinct tally the votes. It wouldn't take that long. What do we have? 4, 5, 6, maybe 1,000 in a precinct, if that many? And you wouldn't have to wait in line 3 and 4 hours. Number one. And they're not difficult to use to vote. Number two. And then each precinct can phone in the tally, and they can post the results on the wall. My friends, that's the only way you'll ever know you've got an honest election. And the only reason, and I don't care how they describe it, get into the 21st century or whatever other nonsense, they're stealing your vote. And if you doubt it, I've got a book for you. And it's called Vote Fraud, The Stealing of America, and they've got it on videotape. Yeah, they had problems as a result of it, they being the Collier brothers, but it's very clear. Now, they weren't using the Sequoia Pacific, but those people were nailed in New Mexico, because those electronic geniuses are so easy to rig, and you'd never know it. And any time somebody says vote, and you don't have a record of it, and you can't verify your vote. There is no paper trail, not even a lousy receipt. If you don't start asking questions, you've lost it. Enough of that. One more little bit of interesting stuff, and then Dave will be with us. I don't know if you heard this or not, but a combative, oh yeah, real tough guy. President Clinton today defended controversial campaign fundraising practices. That's not the point. He's saying he and his subordinates broke no laws and that the fault lay in an out-of-whack political system. Now, at a news conference where he was bombarded with questions which he really didn't want, but questions on the issue, here's the point. Clinton also said he could not say definitely whether he himself did or did not solicit campaign donations by telephone from the White House. By God, I don't know anybody anywhere with a shorter memory than Bill and Hillary, and a more convenient memory you'll never find. He could not remember whether he ever used a phone in the White House to solicit campaign donations. I swear to you, use your own common sense. If he never did, I think he could honestly say, hey, I never did that, and I know I didn't. But on the other hand, if he did, as I think we all now have a fairly good reason to suspect, what's he going to say? Gee, I couldn't remember whether I used the phone in the White House to solicit camp. Have you ever known an administration with shorter memories? They keep forgetting things. I can see it if it was Dick Nixon. Gosh, I don't remember if I tape-recorded conversations or not. I don't know. Well, I'll look around the office, and if I can find a tape recorder, get back to me in a day or two. Gives me a chance to destroy any evidence. But I really can't remember whether I did tape record or not. Come on. Are we really that stupid? I mean, do they really believe we can't figure this out? One more time. It's not been that long, Bill Clinton. It's not been that long, just a few months. And if you don't know whether you ever used a phone in the White House to solicit money for your campaign, I'd get to a doctor. Any doctor, anywhere. And maybe he'll prescribe a bottle of Prozac 4 times a day. Whatever. Oh, well, I talk too much. I'll tell you what, let's do a little bit of a pause here. I've kept Dave waiting, and I shouldn't, because he's got some interesting legal information tonight. We'll come back and we'll put him on the air, as they say, post-haste, whatever that means. Or was that the name of a breakfast cereal I had? Gee, I really can't remember this morning what I had. Well, I mean, what the hell? If Bill can get by with it, why can't you? Why can't I? My name's Lou Epton. I'm sitting here on the AM 840 KXNT, coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada, coming to you in 9 wonderful western states, which we're going to fight to protect and preserve. All right, 16 minutes after the hour, Lou Epton back here at the AM 840 KXNT, coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. Dave Hinkson, good evening. Wish you were here in the studio, but I know you're over in California. Good to have you on board.
Good evening, Lou. How you doing?
Well, I don't know.
I was listening to all your comments.
And?
I got a few things to throw in.
Well, throw them.
Let me get a drink in my drink here. Listen.
Be careful now.
Listen
on
to
the
this.
air. We don't drink on the air, Dave.
Okay, I'm not drunk yet.
Okay.
In a few minutes, we're going to talk about, but I was going to tell everybody this would be a good opportunity to turn on their tape recorders, because we're going to have a classic story tonight here in a few minutes.
Uh-huh.
And it's going to put a lot of things to rest.
Good.
As far as legal problems we're having. There's a thing called stealth chip control.
Stealth chip control.
And a lot of the now I've talked to some people off the record, okay?
Uh-huh.
But reliable people. The CIA has a lot of organizations involved in the semiconductor industry.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Okay.
Now, when you walk into a casino, a lot of these casinos use the same chip in the slot machines.
Okay.
Different chips, okay?
Yeah.
You ever notice how nervous the casinos are if you come in with some kind of radio equipment?
Dave, I haven't been in a casino in too long right now.
Well, let me explain. You ever seen the signs that say pay off 99% or pay off 98%?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
okay.
yeah.
The chips that they use have a receiver in them. And when a slight signal is broadcasted in range of said chip can be made to shift.
You have verification of this, I assume.
Yes.
I mean, this is pretty...
This is how the casino can literally change the odds on their machines in a matter of seconds in a whole casino.
I say again, Dave, you can verify this story because you're going to get some casinos very upset here, possibly.
I'm not saying they're committing fraud.
No, I understand.
I mean, they're advertising what their odds are. I mean, if they're saying it's 98 and it's 98, they're not committing any crime.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, you plant a small piece of something in a chip that allows the chip to be controlled from elsewhere.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
What you've got is control over the chip.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the chip they're using is a 20-year-old chip. It's very old technology. I mean, we're talking out of the 70s here.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean...
would they be using these chips in the Sequoia Pacific?
Yes, they are. They're using a very old... I'm saying the chip they're using in the Sequoia Pacific is a very old chip.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, the Sequoia Pacific comes from Dublin, Ireland.
Uh-huh.
And we have reason to believe that Sequoia Pacific is a front organization for the CIA.
Well, we don't know that, though.
I have reason to believe
that the software was a favorite.
See, you people are running around looking at the software and looking into the skirts of this thing, and I'm telling you, I don't think these people want their chips X-rayed. I think you'll find there's a receiver in the chip.
Quite possible.
I'm giving you my opinion. I mean, I'll say it that way if you want, but I think we're all looking the wrong direction. There's a reason they want that chip and that machine tallying the votes.
Well, now, okay, but you were talking slot machines, and we swung over to the voting
Well,
machine.
I want you to know that technology's been around for years. You've heard the rumors about satellites being able to shut the chips down to control the modulars in cars.
I've got a big story upcoming on that. I think one more profound than anybody would have imagined.
I think you'll find it is not some rumor. I mean, they have the technology. They're using the technology. And wouldn't that explain why the Sequoia Pacific is being promoted?
Well,
look, if I could flip a switch and broadcast a weak signal, okay?
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden the vote starts tallying the other direction, if you do a recount, it's going to show that it was accurate, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Even though it's tallying the wrong direction.
You're right.
I'm saying if you want to make these people squirm, let's ask for independent analysis of the controlling chip for that Sequoia Pacific unit. Sent to a laboratory that can dissect it, photograph it, X-ray it, and tell us if it's controlled or not.
That's fair. And if it's clean, I don't think they'd have any objection. Of course, what they would choose would be the cleanest of the clean to send off for examination. So what are we proving?
Well, I'm just, my idea is to come up with ideas, and that's my thing, and share them with people like you and Tom Stone and different people who have worked on this project. I think that we need to find a way to find somebody who can check the chip.
Yeah.
But watch how fast they quit promoting the chip when we start... Look, you turn the light on the rats, they crawl in the hole, okay?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's all about?
That's very true.
Let's figure out what they're up to, and once we can talk about it and start investigating it, kind of wrecks the whole scenario for them.
Dave, wouldn't it be just a lot easier to go back to paper ballots?
Oh, yes. They're constitutional.
And it's too logical, so that probably wouldn't happen now with the current crowd now in power, would it?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Unless we keep fighting for it, and that's what we got to do.
But I wanted to mention that because this technology of chip control, look, we used it on Saddam Hussein. We had a backdoor in one of the chips in his computer, and we accessed his computer and used it against him once we started this Persian Gulf War scenario. And if you look back at the news media and the reports, you'll see that story is there.
Yeah.
They always put a backdoor in all the chips.
That's true. Or in all the computers.
Now, but using a low-level frequency to activate said chip is another thing they're doing. Now, if the satellite were to shut down all the cars, the satellite system in outer space would broadcast a very weak signal recognized only by the chip, and the chip would shut off the ignitions on the cars.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. By the way, for those who are doubting anything right now, let me point out, we had a call. We're talking about this on a show, maybe a month ago, and one of the drivers of Whittlesey called in and said, Lou, I know what you're saying. My cab was killed today. It was just kind of a prank. I couldn't figure it out. I called in the dispatcher, and she laughed and said, well, I was just checking this out, and I thought I'd punch the button, and it killed your cab, so I know it works.
The question is, what do they have to do to turn the chip back on? I don't know.
I don't either.
They might have to either change it, or maybe when the signal quits broadcasting, but I do think you'll notice when you walk into the Vegas casinos, it'll say 98% payback, 97%, 90%, and you wonder, how do they know? And I asked this question of an old top, slot tech one day.
Yeah.
I'm always asking questions, and he said, oh, the chip's controlled.
Huh.
I don't know what in life is honest anymore. Personally, I'm not saying the casinos are doing anything wrong, because maybe they're posting what their odds are running at that moment. And I don't have a problem with that, but I just think people ought to know that there is that kind of control.
Well, I've believed this for a long time, and I'm not advocating anybody stop having a lot of fun. And if you just watch what you're spending, that's great. But they didn't build these marvelous casinos on people winning a lot of money. Think about it.
I know exactly.
That makes sense, doesn't it? I was going to introduce you as a man who has written some of the most outrageous legal briefs that any judge anywhere has ever read.
What's his name?
You know who I'm talking about. He was. As a matter of fact, let's tell that story real quickly. A friend of ours, Bobby Barasini, went into court, and you had done a brief for him. And he presented the brief, and the judge looked at Bobby, and you tell us what it was he said?
Well, he said, which attorney wrote this?
And Bobby said, no attorney wrote this, Your Honor. And what did the judge say?
He said, which paralegal wrote it?
And he said, Your Honor, the judge said something, if I remember correctly, like, the man that wrote this has got to have practiced law for 30 to 40 years.
Yeah, and I want to know who he is.
And I want to know who. That's exactly right.
Well, when Barasini told him it was not an attorney, he told Barasini that if he said that story again, he'd be in contempt of court for telling lies.
Well, you went into court the following day and...
Just to testify that that was me. I'm guilty.
I'm guilty, Your Honor. I wrote that.
I wrote it.
Problem.
But I learned so much since then.
I know.
You didn't know. The whole thing's been a mystery.
Well, if you wrote that when you were ignorant...
problems and figure things out.
If you wrote that when you were ignorant, I'd hate to think what you're writing anymore.
That's what I wanted to discuss tonight.
All right, let's get started.
Okay? I wanted to talk about how we got to where we're at now in this country. And I need to back up, clear down to the founding of the country just briefly.
Okay.
And make a few quick comments. If we come to break, you just let me know and have the people turn on their recorders, because this is the last time we're going to talk about this on the air, probably.
Okay, you got about 3 minutes, and please do not start out once upon a time.
Okay, Okay, what happened was the founding fathers created the country.
Yeah.
The states, the sovereign states.
Right.
Okay, and the sovereign states were called
Federation. California
Republic, Nevada State.
They weren't the original states, Dave.
They were, yes.
No, they weren't the original states.
All of them were called, the words I'm using now, that's what they were called when they were created.
Well,
Alabama State, Virginia State, you see what I'm saying? They weren't called State of Virginia, they weren't called State of Alabama, they were called Virginia State.
Okay, but the 13 colonies were the first.
Right, but they weren't, my point is, I'm telling you the way they were named initially.
Okay.
It would have been California Republic, or Texas Republic, or Texas State.
Right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, these states were sovereign states, and they were judicial in nature. Right. And if a person wanted to become a citizen of, say, the California Republic, he would apply for citizenship with the California Republic. California Republic would grant California citizenship. There was no thing called United States citizen.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
That's the point I was trying to get at. Now, what ended up happening was the Founding Fathers were upset. If you read the Declaration of Independence, most of your listeners have read it, there's a statement in there that says, these dang British have come into this country and brought martial military law onto the land. And they were upset about it. They did not like military law, because under military law, you have no rights. You have no judicial rights. That's the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
And you're guilty till proven innocent. You with me?
I'm with you.
And so they wanted no part, absolutely no part of anything that would give a queen or a dictator the power to create Nazi Germany, so to speak. So we had no federal government. When the Founding Fathers created the 13 colonies, there was absolutely no federal jurisdiction, no federal government. There was no feds, okay?
Right. And by the way, I've got the Constitution, and I'm digging it up because I want to find that quote. So
you can quote it. Look it up as I keep talking then.
Yeah.
So what happened then was we had a problem. We needed a federal government to do treaties and to defend the borders against foreign enemies. So the Founding Fathers got together and they said, look, we need a federal jurisdiction. I know you guys hate it. I know you don't like what happened in the past with the British and their maritime law and their federales, but we need a branch representing all the states, which are judicial, that has the power of the federal maritime law to handle treaties. Well, they agreed to create 10 square miles, known as the District of Columbia, to only put federal jurisdiction or military law in the 10 square miles. Now, one of the Founding Fathers said, well, what do we do if these feds crawl out of their 10 square miles and come out here and try to use this British rule on us again?
Yeah.
And so it was proposed that they would pass the 7th Amendment to keep the British in place. Not the British, but I mean the military law in the 10 square miles. So I'll quote the 7th. In any controversy which exceeds $20, the right of a common law jury shall be preserved.
And on that I'm going to hold you. Stay right there on the 7th Amendment. Well, I remind everyone, my name is Lou Epton. Our guest this evening, Dave Hinkson. We're going to be talking Constitution. All right, it's 27 minutes before the hour. My name is Lou Epton. Our guest is Dave Hinkson. We're here on the AM 840 KXNT. We're talking about one of the greatest documents of all times, even though it was only an amendment to the Articles of Confederation. No, now we're talking about the Declaration of Independence. I was going to say the Constitution, but I'm looking at the Declaration of Independence, and we've gotten up to the 7th Amendment of the Constitution. So let's go forward from there then, Dave.
Am I on the air still? Hello?
I think so. Yeah,
okay.
Hello, Dave. Is that you, Dave?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Earth to Dave.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, hello?
We're here, Dave. Let's go.
You're just hassling me.
I know.
I'm sorry.
Well, this reminds me, by the way, I had a very interesting conversation with Jack and Joyce Winkler, a friend of theirs up in Canada, who was extremely ill. I mean, very ill. Started taking some of your silver, and went to the doctor, and she was due to go on dialysis, and she doesn't have to go on dialysis, and the doctor said, I don't know what the hell it is you're doing, but keep doing it. You're doing very well.
Speaking of strange stories, I had one happen Friday.
Okay.
Just off the subject a little bit. A lady drank a bunch of that copper water.
Yeah.
And she got dizzy and fell down, and they called an ambulance for her, took her to the hospital. She thought she'd been poisoned with the copper, right? They couldn't find anything wrong with her. They sent her home, and she ended up, here's what happened. She had hookworms in her ear canals.
Oh, boy.
Guess what? She was wearing hearing aids. Guess what?
She doesn't need them anymore.
Right.
Do you know what happened to me when I was drinking copper?
What?
I started looking like Abraham Lincoln.
That's not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's nothing to be proud of.
Kevin is nodding his head like, he's sick tonight. I knew it was going to happen.
Okay, back to
cracked.
Okay. You mentioned the Articles of Confederation, so I would like to make a point.
Okay.
The United States Constitution that we were quoting from, you know, the 10 plus the 10 there originally.
Yeah.
Those were an amendment or an addendum added on to the Articles of Confederation.
Very few people are really aware of that, and that's unfortunate.
And the Articles of Confederation are still the law of this land, never canceled. And if you read Article 6 of the United States Constitution, it states that any debt or previous engagement, that means contracts, entered into, but not specifically counseled or in conflict with this Constitution, is still binding. Now, the Articles of Confederation created the states west of the Ohio Valley and is still the law of this land. And common law is specifically defined in the Articles of Confederation. I'd like to add this.
Good.
Now, back to what we were saying.
Right. Now, let's get back to the 7th Amendment.
Okay. When they created the 10 square miles, that's when they wrote the Constitution, known as the U.S. Constitution. And it was commercial, and it pertained to feds. The Constitution, the first 10 amendments, was basically what the feds were allowed to do. It was their, basically, you know, the fence that holds them back or tells them what they're allowed to do. The 10 amendments was basically put there to protect us from those feds. And that's why the 7th Amendment was put into place, is to make sure they don't leave their 10 square miles.
Now, wait, I think that is such a strong and such an important point. I'd like to repeat it loud and clear. These amendments were put in place to protect us from Washington, D.C.
Right.
That's interesting.
So the 7th Amendment was designed to make sure the feds did not leave their 10 square miles, and so that they would do what they're supposed to do and not jump the fence, come into our yards, and pick on citizens who are known as judicial citizens. Common law is also known as judicial law.
Right.
And judicial law is the law of the land, and maritime law is the law of the sea. And the sea law was only supposed to go 10 square miles. In England, for instance, the maritime wall, or the mile square, whatever you want to call it, is 1 mile square, not 10 miles square. Mm-hmm. They're the exact same setup. And for instance, the Queen of England is not allowed any jurisdiction in that mile. Most Americans don't know that we basically have a mirror image of what they have in England, with the mile square, the 10 square miles, and this kind of thing.
Well, don't feel bad. Most Americans don't understand that we're still controlled by European puppeteers.
Well, let's move further in that direction then, okay? So basically, we now have the sovereign states, which are judicial, okay?
Yeah.
And we have 10 square miles with their separate constitution as an amendment or addendum to the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah.
Now, the feds were hungry for more power, okay?
Uh-huh.
And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to basically come out of their 10 square miles and do their thing down here, okay? And this is what caused the Civil War. Because Abe Lincoln, he represented the Queen of England. And to prove that, he was the founder of the Republican Party, which was called the Whigs, because they represented the British Crown.
Yeah.
Now, the North, or the South, I mean, sided with the French Freemasons and the country called France. Okay?
Okay.
And after we had the Revolution and threw the British out of here, the French Freemasons gave us the Statue of Liberty. It's a French Masonic symbol, also known as the Colossus of Rhodes. If you look up in any encyclopedia, under Colossus, you'll find it. In its exact dimensions, and it'll tell you it's for basically sun god worshipping.
The Statue of Liberty?
Huh?
The Statue of Liberty?
Yes, sir.
Is a sun god idol?
Look under Colossus. I'm not going to say it again. Look it up. Colossus of Rhodes.
Then what'll I find?
You'll find a picture of the Statue of Liberty. It'll tell you it's French Masonic statute. It represents Masons. And
Kevin, look that up.
look it up. I'm challenging all the listeners to look it up.
Okay. Colossus of Rhodes.
Right.
C-O-L-L.
How do you spell Colossus? C-O-L-L. I've got Ben Zavinia with me. He's thinking. Anyway, if C-O-L will get you in the right area. Right. Through it, you'll find it. It's Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah, don't ask Ben to spell anything. He can't even spell his name.
You can't even spell your name.
Go ahead.
You're being nice. Okay. Anyway, I keep getting off track, but I wanted everybody to understand what originally happened. Now, here's the problem. When the Civil War started, okay, the South never showed up.
What do you mean never showed up?
Congress never came. It never convened.
Then the
Senate didn't convene.
Congress didn't show up.
None of them showed up.
Right.
Okay? Now, we operate under what's called the Robert's Rules of Procedure.
Yeah.
And under the Robert's Rules of Procedure, if you don't have the next meeting, okay, you don't convene, a thing called sine die kicks in. S-E-N-I-D-I-E, I guess. It basically means it died.
Yeah.
Now, that's when the Republic died. At that point, we were no longer a republic. Now, at the end of the Civil War, they could have reinstated the republic, but they didn't. Now, put yourself in Abe Lincoln's shoes. He's standing there. They're in the middle of this war, okay?
Uh-huh.
And he decided that he wanted to make government move forward under a power called the, what was the power, Ben? Boy, this is such a big story. It was the power of necessity. Under common law necessity. I'll get it right. Okay. Common law is the most powerful form of law. And under common law necessity, that means that there's not a government in place, you can create a temporary emergency government. So Abe Lincoln, what he did was he took the three departments of government, judicial, executive, and legislative. Notice I used the word department. Department. I want people to pay attention there. He convenes those three departments underneath himself, making them branches. And to this day, all of the government is branches underneath the executive branch.
Now, prior to that,
they were departments. And this is why on the dollar bill you have the pyramid with the little light coming out of it. That represents the power of masonry. You with me?
Okay.
And the eagle is holding the branches. That represents branches of government under the executive power controlled by the word Columbia, like District of Columbia, means ruled by Masons. Look up the word Columbia in your encyclopedia.
And what will I find?
Well, you'll find that it's basically, it has meanings.
Well, we've got a very small, inexpensive dictionary. We couldn't find the Colossus.
Well, it's in the encyclopedia, this stuff, but I got Ben here helping me. So anyway, I'm giving you the feedback of, so all of the branches now are branches. And you went to elementary school, they told you you had three branches of government.
Right.
A branch is something underneath something else. Now, prior to the Civil War, you had departments.
Okay.
Okay. When they became branches, that's when it became a democracy.
Ooh. Okay.
That's the difference. Nobody seems to know the difference between democracy and republic. This is when it shifted. Does that logically make sense?
So far, okay.
Okay.
When the South didn't show up,
Sine die kicked in,
and
we convene the three departments as branches under the executive branch, and we have three branches of government now.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
How close to break are we? How are we doing?
Oh, we got what, about 3 minutes?
Okay. So now we're branches of government.
2 minutes.
Now, we have three kinds of jurisdiction in court. We have equity,
Yeah.
we have maritime,
Yeah.
and we have judicial.
Right.
Now, if you say you have the right to remain silent, what kind of right is that? It's a judicial right, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's a contract dispute, it's equity. And if it's a contract or a dispute on the open seas, it's maritime, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you put the judicial branch, which is judges, let's say they're still a department, can they have a judicial trial? Yes.
Yeah.
Because they're a separate department. They're not under anybody, right?
Right.
When the power of the president is only maritime. So you put the judiciary underneath the president, can you have a judicial trial now?
No.
No, you're correct. That's why all these patriots are misguided. They go to court and they're waving these little flags with these little yellow, without the yellow frill, and they're saying, we'd want a trial based on the flag of peace and all that. And the judge is rolling his eyes around. Here's the problem. The yellow frill around the flag represents a court being operated under the power of the executive branch. It's an Army war flag under Bill Clinton.
Or whoever might be in the Oval Office.
Right.
Okay.
Now, here's the problem. When Abe Lincoln conducted his congressional meetings and his Senate meetings underneath Abe Lincoln, what jurisdiction were they now in? Maritime. Whose power were they, who they have to answer to? Abe Lincoln. They're no longer separate departments of government. When Harry Reid and the boys meet in Washington, they're underneath, that's why one show you were arguing with me. I said it doesn't matter, they convene under the power of the president.
Yeah.
There's only one department of government now with branches underneath it in a democracy, and Bill Clinton's at the helm.
And then I'm going to hold you. It is 12 before the hour. Lou Epton back with you, along with our guest Dave Hinkson here on the AM 840 KXNT, and we're talking tonight, I think, some very important stuff, and I wish everybody was really more aware of this, because if we were, I don't think we'd be looking at a lot of the problems that we're faced with today. What do you think, Dave?
I think you're right. Before the show's over, I'd like to make a little announcement here. I'm going to cover an argument that I developed for people who are already political prisoners. I thought we would explain it, and maybe it'll help some people that are already behind bars get out.
All right. What do you say we do that right after we do the top of the hour news?
Just remind me, okay?
Okay, we'll open the second hour with something that'll help people that have been political prisoners.
You have a lot of listeners who are in jail that don't belong there.
They got nothing else to do.
They're listening right now, and God bless those people.
Yeah.
Anyway, you'll find under military courts, and 4 of the United States Code, it states that the flag with the gold fringe is a military court. That's found under 4 USC.
Okay.
Okay, so it wasn't just some theory I had. All the stuff that we've covered so far is provable. Okay, we're not sitting here just rapidly, wildly throwing out accusations. I've been working for years trying to figure out the big picture here.
I know that, and you've been...
I'm closer now than ever. This is kind of an update for everybody.
Well, I think it's kind of an interesting breakthrough to recognize that when this really started was with our own Civil War, and you never hear that talked about. And of course, when we look at the presidents that everybody so admires, you got Washington, Lincoln, how many others? But those two were definitely always there, and specifically now with what happened with Lincoln. Do you think he was aware of what he was doing at the time when he did it?
Yes, and I think he was sorry he did it, and I think he wanted to put it back as a republic. I don't want to say too much bad about him because he seems to be an idol of everybody's.
Yeah. Well, so was Roosevelt. And
I will say that that's why they shot him, in my opinion, was because he, A, was printing greenbacks, and B, he wanted to restore the republic. And of course, the bankers did not want the republic restored. They want military martial rule.
Why would the bankers want martial rule?
Because you have no constitutional rights.
Well, how does that benefit the bankers?
Because when you have no rights, they can do the things they're doing. They don't have to honor any of the Constitution.
Well, now wait a minute.
Everything's a front, Lou. They're just pretending that people... All the listeners out here have no rights constitutionally. Because in a maritime court, when you're at sea, they can make you walk the plank. You have no rights. This is why when you go into an IRS court or any other federal court, the guy gets up. I remember that case up in Montana where the IRS killed the guy. He went to court. He had great legal arguments. He went into the federal court, and the judge said, "How do you plead?" And he said, "Well, I don't want to plead. I think you're violating my constitutional rights." And the judge said, "Shut up. You mentioned Jesus or God or the U.S. Constitution one more time in this courtroom, and you're in contempt, and we're going to finish this trial with you behind bars." And the guy stood there dumbfounded. He couldn't believe what he just heard. He stood there, couldn't open his mouth, and they had their way with him, and off to prison he went for 8 years, okay?
Well, could that have been just that individual judge who was violating everything that we hold?
The judges go to the secret school in Reno. All the judges in the U.S. go to the secret school in Reno, and according to their level of judgeship,
how do we know about it?
They go to different degrees or levels of understanding of the conspiracy.
Well,
it is safe to say, and I'm going to bet my whole reputation on it, that if you're a Supreme Court judge, you're at the top, you know all of it.
But if it's a secret school, how can we know about it?
Well, the school's not secret, but they don't invite anybody else to go in there to learn those secrets of being a judge. And once you get to a high enough position as judge, you're not allowed to go back and practice law. You agree not to.
Judges have gone back into practice.